touch her again and you die," Mafia boss growled when my ex threatened me, in a cold whisper. The rain in Harborview City did not wash things clean. It only made the grime on the sidewalks slicker and drove the chill deeper into the bones of the old buildings. Inside, the daily grind. A coffee shop that had seen better decades. The air was thick with the smell of roasted beans and damp wool. Lena Hart wiped down the counter for the 10th time that hour. Her wrist ached. The fluorescent light overhead flickered with a low, maddening buzz that seemed to synchronize with the thumping of a headache behind her temples. It was 11 at night, and the cafe was empty save for a single customer nursing a cold cup of tea in the corner. She pushed a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear and glanced at the clock. 1 hour left, just one more hour of standing on her feet, forcing a polite smile and pretending that her life was not slowly suffocating her. Lena was 26 years old, but she felt 50 by day. She huddled over a second-hand laptop in her cramped apartment, working as a freelance graphic designer, taking whatever low-paying logo work she could find online. By night, she wore this apron. The combined income was barely enough to cover the rent of her studio apartment, a place with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that hissed like a cornered cat. She checked her phone, which sat face down on the counter. It was a reflex she hated. Even though she had changed her number 4 months ago, the phantom vibration still haunted her. She moved to the register to count the cash drawer. $42.50 in tips. It was not enough. It was never enough. As she stacked the bills, her mind drifted, pulled back by the gravity of a memory she tried desperately to outrun. It always started the same way. Ryan Cole, in the beginning. Ryan had been the solution to all her problems. He was charming, successful, and seemingly stable. He had swept into her life with confidence that felt like safety. He brought her flowers on Tuesdays. He remembered her favorite color. He told her she was too talented to be wasting her time on small projects, but the perfect boyfriend image was a veneer, thin and brittle. The memory shifted, darkening. She remembered the first time he checked her phone. He'd laughed it off, saying he was just curious, but his eyes had remained cold. Then came the questions. Who were you talking to? Why did you wear that dress? You know, I am the only one who really understands you. Lena. The emotional control had been a slow-acting poison. It was not a sudden blow, but a gradual erosion of her reality. He isolated her from her friends, claiming they were jealous of their relationship. He made her doubt her own memory. And then came the thinly veiled threats. He never hit her. He was too smart for that. He knew that bruises could be photographed. Instead, he used his voice. He would lean in close, trapped in a car or a quiet room, and whisper things that made her blood run cold. You would be nothing without me. If you ever tried to leave, I would find you. I would make sure no one else ever wanted you. She had fled in the middle of the day while he was at work, packing only one suitcase. She took a bus to Harborview City, a place where she knew no one, and disappeared into the gray anonymity of the urban sprawl. The bell above the cafe door chimed, shattering the memory. Lena flinched, her hand knocking against the register. The door opened, bringing a gust of wind and rain into the warm shop. A group of 4 men walked in. They were not the usual late-night crowd of tired students or insomniacs. These men wore suits that cost more than Lena made in a year. The fabric was dark, tailored impeccably to broad shoulders. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted instantly. The air grew heavy. Leading them was a man who looked like he owned the very ground he walked on. He was tall, with hair the color of midnight and eyes that scanned the room with predatory intelligence. He moved with a fluid, controlled grace, devoid of wasted energy. This was Dante Moretti. Lena did not know his name then, but she felt the weight of his presence. The other staff member, a teenager named Ben, who was sweeping the back, froze. He looked terrified. Dante approached the counter. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, but it was a beauty that warned you not to touch. His features were sharp, his jawline defined as if carved from marble. "Good evening," Dante said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth like aged whiskey, but with a rough edge that suggested it could burn. "Good evening," Lena managed to say, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "What can I get for you?" "4 espressos, black and water for the table," he ordered. He placed a $100 bill on the counter. "Keep the change." Lena stared at the money. "Sir, the total is only $12. "I know," he said, his dark eyes locking onto hers. For a second, she felt like he was reading every secret she had buried. "Consider it a convenience fee for the late hour." He turned and led his men to a booth near the window. They sat in silence, their voices low. Lena made the drinks, her hands trembling slightly. When she brought the tray to their table, Dante watched her. He did not ogle her or look at her with the hungry entitlement she was used to from men in this city. He observed her. It was a look of assessment, respectful but intense. "Thank you," he said as she set the cups down. She nodded and retreated to the safety of the counter. 10 minutes later, the door opened again. This time, a man stumbled in, bringing the smell of cheap liquor with him. He was disheveled, his eyes red and unfocused. He scanned the room and zeroed in on Lena. "Hey, sweetheart," the drunk slurred, leaning heavily on the counter. "You look lonely." "I'm working, sir," Lena said, stepping back. "Can I get you a coffee?" "I don't want coffee," he muttered, reaching over the counter. His hand, clammy and rough, clamped around her wrist. "I want you to smile. You are too pretty to be so serious." Panic flared in Lena's chest. The grip was tight. "Let go of me," she said, trying to pull her arm back. "Don't be a bitch," the man spat, his mood swinging instantly to aggression. "I'm just being nice." Before Lena could shout for Ben, a shadow fell over the counter. Dante Moretti was there. He had moved so silently she hadn't heard him approach. "Let her go," Dante said. He did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He spoke in a tone of absolute, icy calm that was far more terrifying than any scream. The drunk blinked, looking up at Dante. "Mind your business, pretty boy." Dante's expression didn't change. He reached out and took hold of the drunk's wrist, the one holding Lena. With a motion that looked effortless, he applied pressure. The drunk gasped, his knees buckling as his hand was forced open. Dante removed the man's hand from Lena's arm as if he were discarding a piece of trash. He leaned in, his face inches from the drunk's terrified eyes. "Walk out that door," Dante said, his voice a low rumble. "Do not look back. Do not come back. If you upset this woman again, you will answer to me." The drunk scrambled back, clutching his wrist, sobering up instantly under the weight of the threat. He turned and fled into the rain without a word. Lena stood frozen, rubbing her wrist where the red marks were fading. She looked at Dante. This was power. But it was different from Ryan's power. Ryan's control was sneaky, manipulative, born of insecurity. Dante's power was blatant, controlled, and protective. "Are you all right?" Dante asked, his eyes searching her face. "I am fine," Lena breathed. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "I did," Dante replied simply. He looked at her for 1 second longer, a gaze that made her knees weak, before turning and walking back to his table. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. When Dante and his men left, he nodded to her once, a silent acknowledgement. Closing time came. Lena locked the front door, rattling the handle twice to be sure. It was a compulsion she couldn't shake. She pulled her coat tight against the wind and started the walk to her apartment. It was only 6 blocks, but at midnight, 6 blocks felt like 6 miles. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The streetlights reflected in the puddles, creating distorted mirrors on the asphalt. Lena walked briskly, her keys clutched between her knuckles, a trick she had learned online for self-defense. She heard footsteps behind her. Tap, tap, tap. She stopped. The footsteps stopped. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Ryan? No. Ryan didn't know where she was. She'd been so careful she started walking again, faster this time. The footsteps resumed, matching her pace. Panic rose in her throat, tasting like bile. She was about to run when a black sedan rolled slowly alongside her. The passenger window slid down with a soft whir. Lena braced herself to scream, but the face that appeared was not a threat. It was the driver of the car from the cafe. He was an older man with a scarred eyebrow. "Miss Hart," the driver said. Lena stared at him. "How do you know my name?" "Mister, Moretti noticed you walking alone," the driver said, keeping the car at her walking pace. "He instructed me to ensure you made it to your door safely. He does not like the idea of a lady walking these streets after what happened tonight." Lena looked at the back seat, but the windows were tinted too dark to see inside. She didn't know if Dante was in there watching her. "I am almost there," she said, her voice trembling. "I can manage. I will drive slowly right here until you are inside," the driver insisted politely. "Please, boss's orders." There was no room for argument in his tone. Lena walked the remaining 2 blocks with the sleek black car acting as a shield between her and the dark alleyways. When she reached her apartment building, she turned to the car and gave a small, hesitant wave. The driver nodded, and the car idled until she was safely inside the lobby. The protective gesture unsettled her. It was intrusive. Yes, but for the first time in months, the icy knot of fear in her stomach loosened just a fraction. She felt watched over. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her hallway. The fluorescent light in the corridor was flickering, casting long, jumping shadows. She reached her door and froze. Sitting on the welcome mat was a bouquet of lilies. They were pristine, white, and beautiful. They were also her favorite flower. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. She approached them slowly, as if they were a bomb. There was no card tucked into the blooms, just a small piece of folded paper with shaking fingers. She picked it up and unfolded it. You can't hide forever. The handwriting was jagged and familiar. It was Ryan. She dropped the note as if it had burned her. The silence of the hallway was suddenly deafening. She could hear his voice in her mind, that cold, mocking whisper. "Did you think you could run away from me, Lena?" He had found her. She fumbled with her keys, dropping them once before jamming the right one into the lock. She threw herself inside her apartment, slamming the door and locking all 3 deadbolts she had installed. She backed away, staring at the wood, waiting for him to pound on it. Silence. She didn't sleep that night. She sat on her floor, pushing a chair under the doorknob, clutching her phone, wondering if she should run again. But where would she go? She had no money left to move. The morning sun brought no relief. It only illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air of her small life, a life that was now compromised. She dragged herself to the cafe for the morning shift. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and her hands shook as she poured coffee. Every time the door chime rang, she jumped. At 10 in the morning, the door opened. Ryan Cole walked in. He looked exactly as she remembered. He was dressed in a crisp navy suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled. He looked like the successful businessman he was. He looked normal, he looked safe. That was his greatest weapon. He walked straight to the counter. Lena felt her lungs seize up. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. "Hello, Lena," he said. His voice was pleasant, conversational. He leaned his elbows on the counter, invading her space. "You are hard to find." "Leave me alone," Lena whispered, her voice cracking. "Get out." "Now, is that any way to greet an old friend?" Ryan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were dead, flat things. "I just want to talk. We have so much to discuss. Like why you stole money from me when you left." "I didn't steal anything," Lena said, her voice rising slightly. "I took my own savings." "Shh," Ryan hushed her, placing a finger against his lips. He leaned closer, dropping his voice to that terrible, cold whisper she had heard in her nightmares. "Don't make a scene. Lena, you know I hate scenes. I just want you to come back home. You belong with me." "I'm not going anywhere with you," she said, gripping the counter to keep from falling. "Oh, I think you will," Ryan murmured. "I know where you live now. 3rd floor, right? Apartment 3B. Maybe I will drop by your place tonight. We can have a real conversation without all these people around." Lena froze. The threat was clear. He was going to come for her. The door chimed again. Ryan didn't turn around, but Lena looked up. Dante Moretti had just walked in. He was wearing a gray suit today, looking just as imposing as the night before. He stopped a few feet from the counter. His eyes went instantly to Lena. He saw it all. He saw the way her shoulders were hunched, the terror in her wide eyes, the way her knuckles were white as she gripped the marble top. He looked at Ryan, observing the aggressive lean, the invasion of space. Dante stepped forward. The air in the cafe seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Is there a problem here?" Dante asked. His voice was calm, but there was a current of electricity underneath it. Ryan stood up straight and turned, looking Dante up and down with a sneer. "No problem, just catching up with my girlfriend. We're having a private conversation. Do you mind?" "She doesn't look like she wants to have a conversation," Dante said. He took another step closer. He was taller than Ryan, broader. The physical dominance was immediate. "She is just being overdramatic," Ryan laughed dismissively. "Lena is always like that. Fragile." Dante's jaw clenched. A muscle ticked in his cheek. He looked at Lena. "Do you want him here?" Lena shook her head frantically. "No." Dante turned his gaze back to Ryan. The look on his face was terrifying. It was the look of a predator deciding how to dismantle its prey. Dante stepped into Ryan's personal space, forcing Ryan to take a half step back. Dante leaned down, his voice dropping to a low, guttural register that vibrated in the air. "Touch her again and you die." He said it low enough that only the three of them could hear. It wasn't a shout. It was a fact. It was a promise delivered with the certainty of gravity. The color drained from Ryan's face. For a moment, his arrogance faltered. He looked at Dante's eyes and saw something ancient and violent there. The air turned electric. The sounds of the coffee shop faded into the background. Ryan tried to regain his composure. He straightened his jacket and forced a chilling smile. "You have some dangerous friends. Lena, I wonder how long they will stick around." He looked at her one last time. "I will see you soon." He turned and walked out of the cafe, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him. Lena let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She was shaking uncontrollably now. Embarrassment washed over her. A Mafia boss. She knew what he was. Everyone in the city knew the name Moretti, had just stepped into her personal nightmare. Dante watched Ryan leave, then turned back to Lena. His expression softened, the violence receding behind a mask of civility. "I'm sorry," Lena stammered. He is my ex. I didn't mean to bring trouble." "You didn't bring anything," Dante said quietly. "He brought it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. It was heavy. Black cardstock with silver lettering. It had a name and a number. Nothing else. He slid it across the counter until it rested near her hand. "If he bothers you again," Dante said, his dark eyes holding hers, "call me, day or night." He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked out into the morning light, leaving Lena standing in the smell of coffee and fear, staring at the small black card that felt like a lifeline and a trap all at once. The black business card sat on the scratch laminate of Lena's kitchen table. It looked out of place among the stack of unpaid utility bills and the half-empty mug of tea. The silver lettering caught the dim light of the overhead bulb, spelling out a name and a number that felt like a summoning circle. Dante Moretti. Lena stood over it, a lighter in her hand. The flame flickered, casting dancing shadows against the peeling beige wallpaper. She should burn it. She knew she should. Inviting a man like Dante Moretti into her life was like inviting a wolf to guard the sheep. It might keep the coyotes away, but eventually the wolf would get hungry. She stared at the flame until the metal of the lighter grew hot against her thumb. She snapped it shut. She could not do it. Instead, she swept the card up and shoved it into the back of her junk drawer, burying it beneath a tangle of rubber bands, dead batteries, and takeout menus. She slammed the drawer shut with more force than necessary. She told herself she would never use it. She was a normal woman living a normal life. There were laws for this. There were restraining orders and police reports and courts. She did not need a mob boss. She needed the system to work. But the system felt very far away the next morning at the daily grind. Mia, her coworker and the closest thing Lena had to a friend in Harborview City, noticed the dark circles under Lena's eyes immediately. Mia was a firecracker of a woman, short and fierce, with bright red hair and a refusal to take nonsense from anyone. "You look like you went 10 rounds with a ghost," Mia said, handing Lena a fresh apron. "Did he call again?" Lena tied the strings around her waist, her fingers fumbling. "He did not call. He just appeared yesterday." She told Mia everything about Ryan's visit, leaving out the part about Dante. She was too ashamed to admit that she had been saved by a criminal. Mia slammed the steam wand off, the milk frothing loud and angry. "You have to document this, Lena, every text, every time he shows up. You need to go to the precinct and file a report. Today." Lena wiped down the counter, her stomach twisting. "And tell them what? That he visited me at work? That he wants to talk? He hasn't hit me. Mia, he hasn't threatened to kill me in writing. He's careful. He's Ryan Cole. He's charming and successful and clean-cut. If I walk into a police station, they will see a hysterical ex-girlfriend trying to ruin a good man's reputation." "He is stalking you," Mia insisted, her voice low and urgent. "That is a crime. It is his word against mine," Lena said, staring at the floor. "He makes me feel crazy. Mia, like I am imagining the malice. He's so good at it. Everyone loves him. Who's going to believe me?" Mia reached across the counter and squeezed Lena's hand. "I believe you," Lena squeezed back, gratitude warring with despair. "I know, and that helps. I need to handle this carefully. If I provoke him, it gets worse." But it got worse anyway. Over the next 3 days, the escalation was subtle, precise, and terrifying. It started with the phone calls. Lena's phone would buzz with an unknown number. The first few times, she let it go to voicemail. The messages were just silence, stretching on for 30 seconds before clicking off. Then came the voice. "I miss you, Lena," Ryan's voice said on a voicemail she listened to at 3 in the morning, huddled under her duvet. "I walked past that park we used to go to. Remember? You looked so pretty that day." The next night, the tone shifted. "You are making a mistake ignoring me," the voice said, smooth and devoid of anger, which made it worse. "I know you are there. I know you are listening. Rudeness does not suit you. Lena, it makes you look ugly." By the 4th day, Lena was barely sleeping. Every shadow in her apartment looked like a man. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a footstep. She checked the locks 5 times a night. She stopped eating. The anxiety was a constant hum in her blood, vibrating under her skin. She finished her shift late on Thursday. The rain had returned to Harborview City, a relentless drizzle that soaked the streets and blurred the city lights. Mia offered to drive her home, but Lena refused. Mia lived in the opposite direction, and Lena did not want to be a burden. She wanted to prove to herself that she was not a prisoner. She walked fast, her head down, clutching her bag against her chest. The streets were mostly empty. A car splashed through a puddle nearby, and she jumped, her heart hammering. She took a shortcut through an alley that cut between 2 brick buildings. It was narrower than the main street, shadowed by fire escapes, but it shaved 5 minutes off her walk. Halfway down the alley, a figure stepped out from the shadows of a recessed doorway. Lena stopped dead. Her breath hitched in her throat. It was Ryan. He was leaning against the brick wall, casual, relaxed, as if he had been waiting for a bus. He wore a long trench coat that made him look like a character from a noir film, but there was nothing romantic about the cold glitter in his eyes. "Hello, love," he said. Lena turned to run back the way she came, but he moved with startling speed. He pushed off the wall and stepped in front of her, blocking the path. He didn't touch her, not yet. He just used his body to wall her in, looming over her. "Get out of my way," Lena said, her voice shaking. She hated how weak she sounded. "We need to talk," Ryan said. He took a step closer. Lena took a step back, her spine hitting the rough brick of the building. She was trapped. "I have nothing to say to you," she managed to say. Ryan sighed, a sound of exaggerated patience. He reached out and placed his hand on the wall beside her head, leaning in. His expensive cologne filled her nose, suffocating her. It smelled like cedar and citrus, a scent she used to love, now a scent that made her nauseous. "You are being difficult," he whispered. "I do not like it when you are difficult. If you don't move, I will scream, Lena said. I will go to the cops. Ryan, I swear. Ryan laughed. It was a soft, dry sound. He leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. Go to the cops and tell them what? That your boyfriend wants to talk to you? Go ahead, Lena, humiliate me. Make a scene. His voice dropped an octave, becoming hard as granite. But if you humiliate me by going to the cops, I will ruin your life. I will make sure you never get a job in this city again. I will tell everyone about your little mental breakdown. I will make you look so unstable that no one will ever trust you. Lena trembled. He knew exactly where to hit her. He knew her insecurities, her fear of being seen as broken. Please, she whispered, just leave me alone. I can't do that, he said. You are mine. Lena, you always have been. His hand moved from the wall. He gripped her upper arm. His fingers dug into the soft flesh. Hard. Painful. She gasped, trying to pull away, but his grip was like iron. He wasn't striking her. He was restraining her, showing her exactly how much stronger he was. Let go, she cried out. Shh, he hissed. He yanked her forward, forcing her body against his. She turned her face away, squeezing her eyes shut. He forced a kiss onto her cheek, his lips wet and cold. It felt like a brand. I will be seeing you, he whispered against her skin. He released her abruptly. Lena stumbled back, clutching her arm where his fingers had been. The skin throbbed. She knew there would be a bruise there by morning. Ryan smiled at her, adjusted his coat, and walked past her out of the alley, whistling a low tune. Lena stood there for a long time, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The rain soaked her hair, plastering it to her face. She felt dirty. She felt small. She felt entirely, hopelessly trapped. She didn't remember the walk the rest of the way home. She operated on autopilot, her body moving while her mind screamed. She got inside her apartment and locked the door. Then the deadbolt, then the chain. She threw her bag on the floor and went to the kitchen. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't want to see the apartment. She yanked open the junk drawer, digging frantically through the clutter. Batteries clattered to the floor. A takeout menu ripped. Her fingers found the heavy black cardstock. She pulled it out and stared at it in the dim light coming from the street lamp outside. Dante Moretti. She thought about the police. She thought about the skeptical look on a desk sergeant's face. She thought about Ryan's threat to destroy her reputation, to make her unemployable. He could do it. He had the connections. She looked at the bruise forming on her arm. It was shaped like a hand. She wrestled with her conscience. This was crossing a line. Once she made this call, she was stepping out of the sunlight and into the shadows. But the sunlight hadn't protected her. The sunlight had just given Ryan a clear view of his target. Lena took a shaky breath, picked up her phone, and dialed the number. It rang twice. Moretti, a voice answered. It was him. Not a secretary, not an underling. Dante. His voice was deep, calm, and instantly grounding. It is Lena, she stammered. From the cafe. There was a pause on the other end, then a distinct shift in his tone. It went from professional to alert. Lena, are you all right? Her voice broke. A sob escaped her throat, sharp and sudden. I didn't know who else to call. Where are you? Dante asked. The command in his voice cut through her panic. I'm at home, she said. He cornered me in the alley. Stay there, Dante said. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. I am on my way. The line went dead. Lena sank to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. She sat there in the dark, clutching the phone, waiting. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across her window. She heard the heavy thud of car doors closing. She stood up and went to the peephole. Dante was standing in the hallway outside her door. He was flanked by two men she recognized from the cafe, Luca and the other one, Marco. They stood with their backs to the wall, eyes scanning the corridor. Dante looked at the door. He didn't pound on it. He knocked. 3 distinct, respectful raps. Lena? He called softly. It is Dante. She unlocked the chain, then the deadbolt, then the lock. She opened the door. Dante stood there in a dark overcoat, rain glistening on his shoulders. His face was tight, his eyes dark and furious. But when he looked at her, the anger vanished, replaced by concern. He didn't step inside. He stayed on the threshold. "May I come in?" he asked. The contrast hit her hard. Ryan had blocked her path, forced his way into her space, touched her without permission. Dante, a man who could likely break down this door with one kick, was asking for permission to cross the threshold. "Yes," she breathed. "Please." Dante nodded to his men. "Stay here." "Boss," Luca acknowledged. Dante stepped inside and closed the door gently behind him. The apartment was small and shabby, but he didn't look around with judgment. He looked at her. He scanned her from head to toe, looking for injuries. His gaze stopped on her arm, where she was subconsciously rubbing the spot Ryan had grabbed. "Did he hurt you?" Dante asked. His voice was very quiet. "He didn't hit me," Lena said, wrapping her arms around herself. "He just grabbed me. He wanted to show me he could. He threatened me. He said if I went to the police, he would ruin my life." Dante listened. He stood in the center of her small living room, still wearing his coat, resembling a dark statue, as she spoke, explaining the threats, the forced kiss on the cheek, the way Ryan had made her feel like property. Dante's jaw clenched. A muscle feathered in his cheek, his hands hanging by his sides, curled into fists so tight the knuckles turned white. But he did not interrupt. He let her speak until the words ran out. When she finished, the silence stretched between them. "You have two options," Dante said finally. "Option 1, you go to the police, you file a report. My lawyers can help you. We can force them to take it seriously. But the law is slow, Lena, and men like your ex know how to walk the line between harassment and crime. And option 2, she asked. "Option 2 is my way," Dante said. Lena looked at him. "What does that mean? Dante, I don't want him dead. I don't want blood on my hands. I am not like you. I cannot live with that." Dante's expression softened. "I know you aren't, and I respect that. If I handle this, it does not mean a shallow grave in the woods. It means I speak to him in a language he understands. It means fear. It means he learns that you are off limits. Permanently." "No violence?" Lena asked. "I cannot promise no violence if he attacks you," Dante said honestly. "But I promise I will not hunt him down and kill him. I will stop him. I will build a wall around you that he cannot climb." Lena looked at him. She saw the darkness in him, yes, but she also saw a steadfastness she had never known. "Okay," she whispered. "Do it your way." Dante nodded once. "Done." He moved then, walking past her toward the window. "I need to check the security." "It is just a standard lock," she said, following him. "It is a joke," Dante corrected. He examined the window latch. "A child could pop this with a screwdriver." He made a mental note. "I will have someone come tomorrow to reinforce these." He moved through the apartment with efficient purpose. He checked the back door. He checked the fire escape access. Lena followed him. Feeling strange seeing this dangerous man in her intimate space, they ended up in the narrow hallway that led to the bathroom. It was a tight squeeze. Dante turned to face her, and suddenly, the air left the room. They were standing inches apart. The hallway was too narrow for him to pass without brushing against her. He stopped. He looked down at her. Lena looked up. His eyes were the color of espresso, dark and intense. He looked at the bruise forming on her arm, then up to her face. He reached out. Lena flinched instinctively. Dante froze. A flicker of pain crossed his eyes. "I am not him. Lena, I know," she whispered. "I am sorry." Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached out again. His hand was large, warm. He didn't touch her arm. He reached for a strand of dark hair that had fallen across her cheek. With infinite gentleness, he tucked the hair behind her ear. His thumb brushed against her temple. His skin was rough, calloused from a life she could only imagine, but his touch was feather-light. Lena's breath hitched. Her heart stumbled in her chest, an erratic rhythm that had nothing to do with fear. He let his hand linger near her face for a second. The heat radiating from him was intoxicating. She could smell him. Rain, expensive tobacco, and something crisp and clean like cedar. Not the suffocating cologne Ryan wore, but something elemental. "He will not touch you again," Dante murmured. It wasn't a threat. It was a vow. The attraction between them was a physical weight, heavy and thick. Lena felt a pull toward him, a desire to lean into that hand, to rest her head against his chest and let him carry the weight of her fear. Dante seemed to sense it. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back up to her eyes. He pulled his hand back slowly, breaking the spell but leaving the tension vibrating in the air. "I will have Marco stay outside in the car tonight," Dante said, his voice slightly rougher than before. "He will watch the building. You are safe here." "Thank you," Lena said. Her voice was barely a whisper. He walked back to the front door. Lena followed. He opened it, signaling to Luca in the hallway. "We are leaving," Dante said to his man. "Marco stays." Dante turned back to Lena one last time in the doorway. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if memorizing her face. "Lock the door behind me," he instructed. "I will," she said. She reached out to take the business card she had left on the entry table, intending to put it back in her pocket. At the same moment, Dante reached for the doorknob. Their fingers brushed. It was a small contact, fleeting, but it sent a jolt of electricity up Lena's arm. Her cheeks flushed hot. She looked up, startled. Dante looked at her hand, then her face. The corner of his mouth quirked up. It wasn't a smirk. It was a small, crooked half-smile that transformed his harsh features into something devastatingly human. "Good night, Lena," he said. "Good night, Dante," she replied. He stepped out and she closed the door. She locked it, then the deadbolt, then the chain. But this time, the locks didn't feel like the only thing keeping her safe. She went to bed, exhausted but wired. When sleep finally claimed her, the dreams came. She was in the alley again. The shadows were long and sharp. Ryan was there, his face twisted, his cold whisper echoing in her ears. "You are mine. You are mine." She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Ryan reached for her, his fingers turning into claws. Then a shadow fell over him. A large, dark figure stepped between them. "Touch her again and you die?" The voice was a rumble of thunder. Ryan shrank back, dissolving into smoke. Lena looked up at the figure. It was Dante. He turned to her, and the darkness around him didn't feel scary. It felt like a blanket. Lena woke up with a gasp, her heart racing. Sunlight was streaming through the window. She lay there for a moment, listening to the sounds of the city waking up. She realized two things. First, she felt safer than she had in months knowing Dante Moretti was out there. And second, the fact that she found comfort in a man capable of such violence terrified her almost as much as Ryan did. The bell above the door of the daily grind chimed, signaling the start of another Tuesday. But for Lena Hart, it sounded like a warning bell. She was trying. She was trying so hard to reclaim the borders of her life, to pull them back from the encroaching shadows of her past. She threw herself into her routine with the desperation of a drowning woman clutching a lifeline. She woke up at 7. She made oatmeal. She went to work. She smiled at customers. She worked on her graphic design portfolio during her breaks. Mia had suggested journaling. "Get it out of your head and onto paper," she had said, sliding a leather-bound notebook across the counter a week ago. "It stops the thoughts from looping." So Lena wrote. She sat in her apartment, the doors triple locked, and poured the ink of her trauma onto the page. She wrote about how Ryan used to critique her clothes until she changed them. She wrote about the way he would check the mileage on her car to ensure she hadn't driven anywhere he didn't know about. It helped. In a small, painful way. It made the abuse feel like a story that had happened to someone else, something she could close the cover on. But Ryan refused to stay between the pages of a notebook. He was a ghost that haunted the periphery of her vision. He did not show his face, but he made sure she felt the drop in temperature. It was the unknown number calling her phone at 2 a.m, leaving only the sound of slow, rhythmic breathing on her voicemail. It was the accidental run-ins, seeing a silver sedan that looked exactly like his idling at the corner when she walked to the grocery store, only for it to drive away the moment she looked directly at it. She was living in a state of high-alert exhaustion. The only time the static in her head quieted was when Dante Moretti walked through the door. He had started coming in more often. At first, it was just for the late-night espresso. Then, he started stopping by in the mid-afternoon lulls. He never imposed. He never sat at the counter and demanded her attention the way Ryan would have. He simply took a table near the register, opened a newspaper or checked his phone, and existed in her space. His presence was a heavy, anchoring weight. When Dante was there, the other customers seemed to quiet down. The drunk men didn't leer. The chaotic energy of the city seemed to break against him like waves against a cliff. Slowly, the silence between them began to fill with words. "You look tired," Dante said one Wednesday afternoon. The shop was empty. He was standing at the register, waiting for his usual order. "Bad dreams," Lena admitted, surprised by her own honesty. She usually deflected. "I know the feeling," Dante replied. He placed a $5 bill on the counter. "Chamomile tea helps, and avoiding the news." Lena smiled. A genuine. "Small thing. I thought mob bosses drank whiskey for sleep." Dante's lips quirked. He didn't deny the title. "Whiskey is for forgetting, tea is for resting. There is a difference." Over the next 2 weeks, these small exchanges grew into conversations. They talked about books. Lena was surprised to learn that Dante read dense, historical biographies. He was fascinated by the rise and fall of empires. "It is all the same pattern," he told her once, leaning against the counter while she wiped down the espresso machine. "Men build things because they are afraid of being forgotten. Then their sons destroy them because they are afraid of being remembered only as sons." "Do you have family?" Lena asked, risking a personal question. Dante's face closed off for a moment, then relaxed. "I have the organization. That is family enough. My parents passed a long time ago. My father was a difficult man. He taught me how to survive, but he did not teach me how to live." "I understand that," Lena said softly. "Ryan, he made survival a full-time job. I forgot what it was like to just be—" Dante looked at her then, and she saw the glimpse of a man trapped inside the myth. He looked lonely, not the frantic loneliness of someone who needs validation, but the deep, hollow loneliness of a man who stands at the top of a mountain and realizes the air is too thin to breathe. One rainy Thursday, Lena stayed late. The cafe had officially closed at 10, but the owner, Mr. Henderson, let her stay to use the Wi-Fi for her design work. Her apartment internet was spotty, and she had a deadline for a freelance logo project. The cafe was dim, lit only by the security lights and the glow of her laptop screen. Outside, the rain hammered against the glass, turning Harborview City into a watercolor painting of grays and blacks. The door chime rang. Lena jumped, her heart spiking, but when she looked up, it was Dante. He was wearing a long black coat, the shoulders soaked with rain. He paused at the door, seeing the closed sign, then saw Lena sitting at the back table. "I saw the light," he said, his voice carrying across the empty room. "I wanted to make sure you were not alone." "Just working," Lena said, relaxing. "Mr. Henderson lets me stay." Dante walked over. He didn't order anything. He pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. "May I?" "Of course." He looked at her screen. It showed a complex, vibrant design of a phoenix rising from geometric ashes. It was bold, colorful, and entirely unlike the gray world they lived in. "You made this?" Dante asked, leaning in. "It is for a startup downtown," Lena said, feeling a flush of pride mixed with shyness. They wanted something that represented rebirth. "It is beautiful," Dante said. He looked from the screen to her. "You have a rare talent, Lena. You can see color where others see only shape." "Ryan used to tell me graphic design was a waste of time," Lena murmured, staring at the keyboard. "He said it was a hobby, not a career." "Ryan is a fool," Dante said. The name came out of his mouth like a curse. "He tried to make you small so he could feel big. Do not let him win. You build this. You build your life." The conversation shifted, deepening in the quiet intimacy of the empty room. Dante spoke about his own past. He told her about growing up in the shadow of the Moretti crime family, how he was pulled into the life at 16 when his uncle was killed. "I did not want this life," he admitted, staring at his hands. They were large, capable hands, resting on the table. "I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to build skyscrapers. But blood demands blood. By the time I realized I had a choice, I was already too deep in the mud to walk out clean." "Do you regret it?" Lena asked. Dante met her gaze. "Every day. I have done things. Lena, things I am not proud of. Violence is a language I speak fluently, but I hate the taste of it." Lena looked at him and saw the weariness in his eyes. It mirrored her own exhausted soul. They were two people scarred by the violence of men, one who inflicted it to survive, and one who survived the infliction. Suddenly, a crack of thunder shook the building. It was so loud it rattled the cups on the shelves. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died. The cafe plunged into darkness. Lena gasped, pushing her chair back. The sudden absence of light disoriented her. The only illumination came from the streetlights outside, filtering through the rain-streaked window in pale, watery beams. "Stay still." Dante's voice came from the dark, steady and calm. She heard the scrape of his chair. Then she felt his presence beside her. He had moved around the table. "It is just a power outage," he said. He was close. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, a warm wall against the chill of the room. Her eyes adjusted to the gloom. She could see the outline of his shoulders, the sharp angle of his jaw, the glint of his eyes watching her. "I hate the dark," Lena whispered. "It reminds me of—" "I know," Dante said. His hand found hers in the darkness. He didn't grab it. He just covered her trembling fingers with his own. His skin was rough, warm, and incredibly grounding. "You are safe," he said. They stood there, inches apart, suspended in the gray light. The sound of the rain was a deafening drumbeat against the glass. Dante raised his other hand. He reached out and brushed his knuckles along her cheek. The touch was electric. Lena stopped breathing. She felt a shiver race down her spine, not of fear, but of something else. A yearning she had thought Ryan had killed in her forever. She leaned slightly toward him. Her body moved on its own accord, drawn to his gravity. Her lips parted. She looked up at him, and in the shadows, his eyes were burning with an intensity that terrified and thrilled her. Dante lowered his head. He was so close she could feel his breath on her face. It smelled of mint and rain. She closed her eyes, waiting for the kiss, wanting the kiss to erase the memory of Ryan's forced affection. He stopped. His lips hovered an inch from hers. She could feel the warmth of them, but he did not close the gap. "Lena," he whispered. His voice was rough, strained. "I will not take anything you are not ready to give, not like him." He pulled back slowly. His thumb brushed her cheek one last time, a lingering caress that felt like a promise. "The power will be back soon," he said, stepping back to put a respectful distance between them. "I will wait with you until it does." Lena opened her eyes, her heart hammering against her ribs. She felt a pang of loss, but beneath it, a swelling tide of respect. He had the power to take, and he chose to wait. Outside, across the street, the rain provided cover for a different kind of watcher. Ryan Cole sat in his dark sedan, the engine off. The windshield wipers were still, and the water sluiced down the glass, distorting the view of the cafe. But he could see enough. He had a camera with a telephoto lens resting on the steering wheel. He had snapped frame after frame. He saw the lights go out. He saw the silhouettes in the window. He saw Dante move close. He saw the intimacy of the hand on the cheek, the leaning in. Jealousy twisted in his gut like a knife. His face contorted in the dark car, a mask of humiliation and rage. "She thinks she is too good for me," Ryan hissed to the empty car. "But she lets a criminal touch her." He looked at the digital display on the camera. The image was grainy and dark, but unmistakable. The feared Dante Moretti, looking at a barista like she was the center of his universe. Ryan picked up his phone. He dialed a number he had acquired through a shady business associate weeks ago. "I have something for you," Ryan said when the line connected. "This better be good. Cole," a gravelly voice answered. "Mr. Serrano does not like his time wasted. It is better than good, Ryan said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. I found Moretti's weak spot, and I have the pictures to prove it. Victor Serrano was the head of the rival crew that had been clawing at Moretti's territory for years. They were ruthless, undisciplined, and hungry. Ryan didn't care about mob politics. He didn't care about territories. He cared about ownership. And if Dante Moretti was playing with his property, then Dante Moretti needed to be broken. Send them, the voice said. I want a deal, Ryan said. When you take him down, the girl is mine. She comes back to me, unharmed. We don't care about the girl, the voice laughed. Send the pictures. Ryan hit send. He watched the progress bar fill up. Message sent? He looked back at the cafe window, where the lights had just flickered back on. He saw Dante and Lena standing apart, looking normal, but Ryan knew better. He knew he had just lit a fuse that would burn everything down. The next morning, the sun was shining, a cruel irony given the storm that was brewing. Lena left her apartment at 8. She opened her door and stepped into the hallway. Her foot crunched on something. She looked down. A white envelope lay on her welcome mat. Her stomach dropped. She bent down and picked it up. There was no name on it. She tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was printed on cheap paper, the ink slightly smeared. It was the image from last night. It showed her and Dante in the dark cafe, illuminated by the streetlight. It captured the exact moment his hand was on her face and she was leaning into him. It looked intimate. It looked like lovers sharing a secret. Lena's hand shook violently. She turned the photo over. Scrawled on the back in black marker were 5 words. You really traded down. Lena, Ryan, he had been there. He had been watching. He had seen the one moment where she had allowed herself to feel safe, and he had turned it into something dirty. He had violated the only sanctuary she had left, terror. Cold and sharp, pierced through her. It wasn't just fear for herself anymore. By being near her, Dante was exposed. Ryan knew, and if Ryan knew, who else did he tell? She ran to the cafe. She didn't wait for her shift. She burst through the doors, her chest heaving. Dante was there. He was sitting at his usual table, reading a paper. He looked up as she entered, a smile beginning to form on his lips. But it died the instant he saw her face. He stood up immediately. Lena? She marched over to him. Ignoring the few customers who turned to look, she slammed the photo onto the table between them. Look at this, she hissed, her voice trembling with a mixture of fury and panic. Dante looked down. His eyes narrowed. He didn't flinch. He picked up the photo, examining it with a clinical detachment that infuriated her. He turned it over and read the note. He was watching, Lena said, tears stinging her eyes. He was outside the window. You said I was safe. Dante, you said he wouldn't touch me. He didn't touch you, Dante said calmly. He touched my life, Lena cried. He's watching us. He sees you with me. Do you know what that means? It means you are dragged into this mess. It means you are a target because of me. I have been a target since I was 16, Dante said. He tried to reach for her arm, but she pulled back. No, she said. Don't you get it? You are making it worse. By inserting yourself into my life, you are provoking him. He's escalating because of you. He wants to prove he is better than you. She was lashing out. She knew it. She was angry. Yes, but beneath the anger was a terror so profound it made her knees weak. She wasn't just scared of Ryan. She was scared that Dante would get hurt. She was scared that the only man who had treated her with respect would bleed because she was too weak to handle her own ex-boyfriend. I am sorry, Dante said. His voice was low, cutting through her panic. I underestimated his obsession. I thought fear would keep him away. I was wrong. You were wrong, Lena accused, wiping a tear from her cheek. And now he has leverage. He has nothing, Dante said, his voice hardening into steel. He has a picture. That is all. He has us, Lena whispered. He knows I care about you. The words hung in the air between them. She hadn't meant to say it. It was a confession she wasn't ready to make. Dante went very still. He looked at her, and for a second, the mask of the mob boss slipped entirely. revealing a man who looked stunned by the idea that someone would worry about his safety. "Go home, Lena," Dante said gently. "Lock your door. I need to handle this." "Handle it how?" she asked. "By making sure he never holds a camera again," Dante said. "I will increase the security at your building. Marco will not be alone. I will have a team. Dante, go," he commanded. Soft but firm. Lena turned and fled the cafe. She couldn't look at him. She felt exposed, raw, and terrified. Dante watched her go. He waited until she was safely in a taxi before he moved. He picked up the photo. He crumpled it in his fist, his knuckles turning white. He pulled out his phone and dialed Luca. "Assemble the circle," Dante said. His voice was no longer the gentle baritone he used with Lena. It was the voice of the capo. "Meeting in 20 minutes. We have a problem." He walked out of the cafe, leaving his coffee untouched. This was no longer a personal favor. This was no longer just about protecting a woman he was beginning to love. Ryan Cole had aligned himself with the Serrano crew. Dante knew it as surely as he knew the rain would fall. A picture like that didn't just stay with a jealous ex. It went to enemies. It went to anyone looking for a chink in the armor. Ryan had made a fatal error. He thought Lena was a weakness Dante would hide, but Dante Moretti didn't hide his treasures. He fortified them. And if Victor Serrano thought he could use Lena Hart to get to Dante, he was about to learn that Dante was perfectly willing to burn the entire city to the ground to keep her safe. The war had begun. The unmarked sedan had become a permanent fixture on the corner of 4th and Elm. It was a nondescript gray model, the kind that blended into the pavement and the overcast sky of Harborview City. But Lena knew it was there. She knew that inside sat a man named Marco, or sometimes a younger man she didn't know, watching her front door with the unblinking patience of a gargoyle. Inside the hallway of her apartment building, a small, high-definition camera had been discreetly mounted above her door frame. It was sleek and barely noticeable, a silent sentinel that fed a live stream directly to a security server Dante controlled. Lena stood in her kitchen, staring at the monitor Dante had installed on her counter. It showed the empty hallway in grainy black and white. She should have felt invaded. A month ago, the idea of a crime boss monitoring her comings and goings would have sent her running for the hills. But now, as she poured hot water into her tea mug, she felt a strange, heavy settling in her chest. It was the feeling of an anchor hitting the sea floor. For the first time in weeks, she had slept through the night. The nightmares about Ryan whispering in the dark had been kept at bay by the knowledge that a wolf was guarding her door. A knock sounded, 3 distinct, firm raps. Lena checked the monitor. Dante stood there. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at the wood of the door, his posture straight, his hands empty. She unlocked the door and opened it. "Good evening," Dante said. He looked tired. There were shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of late nights and difficult decisions, but his gaze, when it landed on her, softened instantly. He held a paper bag from a bakery down the street. "I come bearing peace offerings," he said, a small smile touching his lips. "Cannoli. I remember you said you had a weakness for them." "I do," Lena admitted, stepping back to let him in. "Thank you." They settled in her small living room. The air between them had changed since the incident with the photograph. The panic had receded, replaced by a fragile, deepening intimacy. Dante took off his coat, revealing a crisp white shirt with the top button undone. He looked less like a mob boss and more like a weary man seeking sanctuary. "How is the security?" Dante asked, sitting on the edge of her worn sofa. "Intense," Lena said, sitting opposite him in the armchair. "I feel like a diamond in a museum vault." "Good," Dante said. "Diamonds are precious. They should be guarded." The atmosphere shifted. It became quieter, heavier. Lena looked at her hands, tracing the rim of her mug. She had been carrying a weight around for days, a need to explain, to purge the shame that Ryan had instilled in her. "He didn't just scare me." "Dante," Lena said softly. She didn't need to say Ryan's name. Dante went still. He set his coffee down. "Tell me, It wasn't just the stalking, Lena began, her voice trembling. It was the way he took pieces of me. Small pieces, so small I didn't notice they were gone until I was hollow. She looked up, meeting Dante's dark eyes. He controlled the money. He told me I was bad at math, that I was irresponsible. I worked 2 jobs, but I never saw my paycheck. He gave me an allowance, like a child. If I wanted to buy a coffee, I had to ask him. If I wanted to buy a new sketchbook, I had to justify why I needed it. Dante's jaw tightened. His eyes darkened, a storm gathering behind the iris. But he kept his hands unclenched on his knees. He isolated me, Lena continued, the words spilling out faster now. He told me Mia talked about me behind my back. He told me my parents were disappointed in my career choices. He whispered these things until I believed them, until I stopped calling people, until he was the only voice in my world. He wanted you to have nowhere to run, Dante said. His voice was low, dangerously soft. Yes, Lena whispered. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and stinging. And the worst part was the confidence. I used to think I was a good designer, but he would look at my work and just sigh. Or he would ask if I was sure that was the best I could do. He made me feel small. He made me feel like I was lucky he even looked at me. A tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. Then another. I feel so stupid, she choked out, wiping her face angrily. I let him do it. I stayed. Dante moved. He didn't lunge. He didn't rush. He stood up and crossed the small distance between them, sitting on the arm of her chair, then sliding down onto the cushion beside her. He didn't touch her immediately. He respected her space, waiting, offering his presence as a solid wall against her trembling. Lena looked at him through her tears. She saw no judgment in his face. She saw only a fierce, protective sorrow. She reached for him. Her hand grasped the fabric of his shirt. That was the permission he needed. Dante wrapped his arms around her. It was a careful strength, like holding a bird. He pulled her into him, and she went willingly, burying her face in the crook of his neck. She sobbed, letting go of the shame, the fear, the months of holding herself together with Scotch tape and willpower. She felt his hand on the back of her head, stroking her hair. She felt his chin rest gently on top of her head. But mostly, she felt his heartbeat. It was slow, steady, and strong, a rhythmic thud against her ear that drowned out the chaotic noise of her own anxiety. "You are not stupid," Dante murmured into her hair. "You were kind, and he weaponized your kindness. That is his sin. Lena, not yours." They stayed like that for a long time, until her tears dried and her breathing evened out. Later that night, the apartment felt too small for the emotions swelling between them. Lena opened the sliding glass door to the small balcony. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of the ocean and wet asphalt. Harborview City sprawled below them, a grid of amber lights and moving car headlights. Lena leaned against the railing, hugging her arms around herself. The wind bit through her thin sweater. She felt a weight settle over her shoulders. Dante had stepped up behind her, draping his suit jacket over her. It was warm from his body and smelled of him, cedar, tobacco, and rain. She turned around. Dante was standing close. The city lights reflected in his eyes, making them look like polished obsidian. The playfulness was gone. The comfort was gone. What remained was something raw and undeniably magnetic. "You are cold," he said. "A little," she whispered. He reached out, his hands settling on her waist. His thumbs brushed the fabric of her sweater, sending heat spiraling through her. He didn't pull her in. He waited. Lena looked up at him. She saw the question in his eyes. She saw the restraint he was exercising, the leash he kept on his own desire because he refused to be another man who took from her. She made the choice. She rose on her tiptoes. She placed her hands on his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath the silk of his shirt. Dante dipped his head. The kiss was not like the movies. It wasn't a crash of teeth or a frantic grappling. It was slow. It was a question asked and answered in the soft pressure of lips. When their mouths met, Lena felt the world narrow down to this single point of contact. Dante's lips were firm, warm, and incredibly gentle. But as she sighed into him, his control slipped just a fraction. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her flush against him. The kiss deepened. It became hungry. It was the taste of pent-up emotion, of weeks of stolen glances and unspoken words. Lena's fingers curled into the hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer. She felt a low groan vibrate in his chest. He tasted like espresso and danger. He tasted like safety. They broke apart, breathless. Dante didn't let go. He rested his forehead against hers, their noses brushing. His eyes were closed, his breathing heavy and uneven. "Lena?" he breathed, his voice rough. "I am okay," she whispered, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his "I am okay." They stood there on the balcony, wrapped in his jacket in the silence, sharing the intimacy of the moment without needing to take it further. For the first time, Lena felt not just protected, but cherished. Across town, in a dimly lit back room of a warehouse, the atmosphere was devoid of tenderness. Ryan Cole paced the concrete floor. His face was pale, his eyes manic. "I want her tonight," Ryan said, snapping his fingers. "Tonight." Victor Serrano sat on a crate, cleaning his fingernails with a knife. He was a heavy-set man with a pockmarked face and eyes that looked like shark glass. "Patience. Lover boy," Victor grunted. "We do this right. We do not want a war we cannot win. We want leverage. We snatch the girl. We send the message. Moretti backs off the waterfront or the girl disappears." "She doesn't disappear," Ryan snapped, spinning around. "She comes to me. That was the deal." "Sure," Victor shrugged. "Once Moretti is on his knees, you can have your reunion. But first, we need to get her." Ryan pulled up the schedule he had memorized. "She works the closing shift tonight. The other girl, Mia, leaves at 10:15. Lena stays to do the trash and lock the back. She will be alone in the alley for 3 minutes. 3 minutes is an eternity," Victor said. He signaled to 2 men standing in the shadows. "Grab the van. No guns unless necessary. I want her scared, not dead." Ryan smiled, a cold, twisting expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, she will be scared. I will make sure of that." The shift at the daily grind had been grueling. A rush of college students studying for midterms had kept Lena running back and forth between the espresso machine and the pastry case until her feet throbbed. By 10 o'clock, the cafe was empty. Mia untied her apron, looking exhausted. "I am heading out," Mia said, stifling a yawn. "You sure you're okay to close alone? I can stay." "Go," Lena said, waving her off. "Dante's guy is outside." "I saw the car. I am fine." "Okay," Mia said. "Text me when you get home." Mia left through the front door, the bell chiming cheerfully. Lena locked it behind her and flipped the sign to closed. She began her cleanup routine. She wiped the counters. She counted the drawer. She gathered the trash bags from the bins. At 10:20, she hauled the heavy black bags to the back door. She unlocked it and pushed it open. The alley was dark. The streetlight at the end of the block was flickering, casting long, jumping shadows against the brick walls. Lena stepped out, the cool air hitting her face. She tossed the bags into the dumpster. She turned to go back inside. A movement in the shadows caught her eye. Before she could react, a hand clamped over her mouth. It was a gloved hand, tasting of leather and dirt. Lena tried to scream, but the sound was smothered. An arm wrapped around her waist, lifting her off her feet. She kicked out, her boots connecting with a shin, but the attacker didn't let go. "Quiet!" A rough voice hissed in her ear. A white van screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. The side door slid open. Lena thrashed, panic exploding in her brain like a white light. She clawed at the hand on her face. She managed to free her mouth for a fraction of a second. "Dante!" she screamed. It was a short, strangled cry, cut off as a second man grabbed her legs. They threw her into the back of the van. She hit the metal floor hard, the impact knocking the wind out of her. The door slammed shut, plunging her into total darkness. The engine roared, and the van sped away, tires squealing on the wet asphalt. Dante sat at the head of a mahogany table in the back room of an Italian restaurant 3 blocks away. He was in a meeting with his lieutenants, discussing the recent encroachments by the Serrano crew on the docks. His phone which sat face up on the table, vibrated. It was Luca. Dante frowned. Luca knew not to interrupt a meeting unless the sky was falling. He picked it up. "What?" "Boss." Luca's voice was breathless, panic edging the tone. "She is gone." Dante felt the blood in his veins turn to ice. The room went silent. Every man at the table stopped talking, sensing the shift in the air. "What do you mean, gone?" Dante asked. His voice was deadly calm, but his hand gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "I was parked out front," Luca explained rapidly. "Marco was covering the back, but he said he heard a scuffle. By the time we got to the alley, the van was peeling out. We tried to follow, but they cut through the traffic. We lost them." Dante stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Where are you?" "At the cafe," Luca said. "Boss, there is a shoe, and her purse is just inside the door." The calm shattered. Dante didn't say goodbye. He hung up and stormed out of the restaurant. His men scrambled to follow him, leaving cash on the table. Dante drove the 3 blocks to the cafe like a madman, running 2 red lights. He screeched to a halt behind the unmarked car. He ran into the alley. Luca and Marco were standing there, looking pale. Dante saw it immediately. Lena's left boot lay on the wet pavement near the dumpster. The back door of the cafe was wide open, swinging slightly in the wind. He walked over and picked up the boot. It was small, canvas, worn at the heel. A rage unlike anything he had ever felt clawed at his throat. This wasn't business. This wasn't a territory dispute. This was Lena. "Find them!" Dante roared. The sound echoed off the brick walls, primal and terrifying. He turned to his men. His eyes were wild, burning with a fire that promised death. "Lock down the district," Dante ordered, his voice shaking with fury. "Every street corner, every warehouse. Call in every favor. If a rat moves in this city without my permission, I want to know about it. Find Serrano, and bring me his head." The warehouse smelled of rust, old oil, and stale water. Lena was tied to a wooden chair in the center of a large, empty room. Her wrists were bound behind her with zip ties that dug into her skin. Her ankle was tethered to the chair leg. She was shaking, but she forced her head up. She would not cry. She would not give them that satisfaction. Footsteps echoed on the concrete. Ryan stepped out of the shadows. He was wearing a suit, impeccable as always, but his tie was crooked. He held a bottle of water in one hand. "Hello, Lena," he said softly. He walked a circle around her chair. He looked at her like she was a piece of art he had finally acquired at an auction. "This is a bit dramatic." "I know," Ryan said, stopping in front of her. "But you wouldn't answer my calls. You left me no choice." "You kidnapped me," Lena spat. "This is a felony. Ryan." "It is a reunion date," Ryan corrected with a chilling smile. He crouched down so they were eye level. "I missed you. Did you miss me?" "I hate you," she said. Ryan sighed. He reached out and slapped her. It wasn't a hard blow, more of a stinging reminder of who held the power, but it snapped her head to the side. "That is not very nice," he whispered. He pulled out his phone. "I want you to remember how good we were, before you got confused, before you let that thug brainwash you." He pressed play. Audio filled the cavernous room. It was a recording of a voicemail she had left him 2 years ago, back when things were good. "Hey, Ryan, just calling to say I love you. I made dinner. Hurry home." Her own voice, full of warmth and naivety, echoed off the cold walls. It was psychological torture. It was a ghost of the woman she used to be, haunting the woman she was now. "See," Ryan said, his eyes glistening. "You loved me. You still do. You are just scared." "I was scared of you," Lena said, staring him down. "I am still scared of you. That is not love. Ryan, that is a hostage situation. Enough." A deep, gravelly voice boomed. Victor Serrano stepped into the light. He looked bored. He was chewing on a toothpick. "The boyfriend drama is boring me," Victor said. He looked at Lena. "You are a pretty thing. Shame you picked the wrong side." "I didn't pick a side," Lena said, her voice trembling but defiant. "I am a graphic designer. I make logos." "You are leverage," Victor said flatly. "Moretti thinks he is untouchable. He thinks he owns this city. But every man has a soft spot. You are his. He leaned in, the smell of garlic and stale cigars washing over her. If he doesn't give me the waterfront, I'm going to send him pieces of you, a finger, maybe an ear. We will see how tough he is then. Lena's blood ran cold, but she remembered Dante's heartbeat. She remembered the careful strength of his arms. He will kill you, Lena said. She said it with absolute certainty. If you touch me, he will burn this place down with you inside it. Victor laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Let him come. Dante sat in the back of his SUV, a laptop open on his knees. Luca was driving. We got a ping, Marco said from the passenger seat, holding a tablet. We tracked the van's plates. Stolen, obviously, but traffic cams picked it up heading into the industrial district. It went off-grid near the old textile mills. Serrano owns a warehouse there, Dante said. He slammed the laptop shut. Sector 4. It could be a trap, boss, Luca warned, glancing in the rearview mirror. Serrano knows we are coming. He will be waiting. I don't care, Dante said. He checked the clip of his handgun and slid it back into his shoulder holster. His face was a mask of stone. Drive? We should wait for backup, Luca pressed. We have 10 guys coming from the south side. Give them 5 minutes. She doesn't have 5 minutes, Dante said. The image of Lena's boot lying in the rain flashed in his mind. We go in. Now. The SUV roared as Luca floored the accelerator. Speeding toward the looming shadows of the industrial district, the stage was set. The negotiation was over. Dante Moretti was coming for his heart, and he was bringing hell with him. The rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof of the abandoned textile mill, creating a deafening, rhythmic roar that masked the sound of the approaching SUV. The vehicle rolled to a stop 100 yards out, hidden behind a stack of rusting shipping containers. Dante Moretti lowered his binoculars. His face was a mask of stone. But behind the stoic expression a fire raged that threatened to consume him whole, through the rain-streaked lenses. He had seen them. 3 armed guards patrolling the perimeter, 2 more near the loading bay doors. Victor Serrano was not taking chances. He knew exactly what kind of storm was coming. It is a fortress, Luca said from the driver's seat, his voice low and tight. There are too many angles. Boss, if we rush the front, they will see us coming a mile away. We need to wait for the support team. We need a distraction. We do not have time for distractions, Dante said. He checked the magazine of his pistol, the metallic click loud in the confined space of the car. Every second she is in there is a second she is breathing the same air as him. I am not waiting. Dante, Marco said from the back seat, using his first name, a breach of protocol that signaled the severity of the situation. If you go in there and get killed, the organization falls. The Serrano crew takes everything. You are walking into a kill box. Dante turned to look at his men. His eyes were dark voids, devoid of the calculation that usually governed his decisions. If she dies because I hesitated, there is no organization. There is nothing. I am going in. You two take the east perimeter. Draw their fire. Give me a hole to breach the side door. It was not a strategic command given by a Don protecting his empire. It was the desperate, furious order of a man who had finally found something worth bleeding for. Inside the warehouse. The air was cold and smelled of damp concrete and old grease. Lena Hart sat in the center of the cavernous room, her wrists zip-tied painfully tight behind the back of a wooden chair. Her ankle was lashed to the chair leg. She was shivering, but she kept her chin high. She refused to let them see her shake. Ryan Cole paced in front of her. He had discarded his suit jacket, rolling up the sleeves of his pristine white shirt. He looked like a man trying to solve a complex equation, muttering to himself, occasionally glancing at her with a look of wounded affection that made her stomach turn. You are confused, Ryan said, stopping in front of her. He leaned down, resting his hands on his knees. I know you are scared. Lena, I know this looks bad, but you have to understand, I am doing this for us. Sometimes you have to break a bone to reset it properly. Lena looked at him. For years, she had let this man dictate her reality. She had let him tell her she was crazy, that she was overly sensitive, that she was nothing without him. But looking at him now, stripped of the veneer of his social standing, she saw him for what he was. He was small. He was terrified of a world he couldn't control. "There is no us, Ryan," Lena said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "There never was. There was just you, and the mirror you wanted me to be." Ryan flinched as if she had slapped him. "Don't say that. We were perfect. I gave you everything. I gave you a home. I gave you structure." "You gave me a cage," Lena corrected him. "You isolated me from my friends. You controlled my money. You made me afraid to speak in my own apartment." "That isn't love. Ryan, that is abuse. It is textbook. Pathetic control because you are too weak to be with a woman who has her own mind." The accusation hit home. Ryan's face twisted. The mask of the concerned lover fell away, revealing the snarling narcissist beneath. He lunged forward, gripping her face in one hand, his fingers dug into her cheeks, forcing her to look at him. "I loved you," he shouted, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "I did everything for you, and you ran away to serve coffee and sleep with a gangster? You think he loves you? He is a killer. Lena, he is trash." Lena's jaw ached from his grip, but she didn't blink. She stared straight into his frantic eyes. "He treats me with more respect in one day than you did in 3 years. And yes, he might be dangerous, but he is dangerous to people like you. To me, he is safe." Ryan's hand trembled. For a second, Lena thought he might strike her, might truly hurt her this time. "Enough of the soap opera." Victor Serrano's voice cut through the tension. Victor was standing near a stack of crates, adjusting a tripod. He had mounted a digital camera on it, pointing it directly at the center of the room. "Let go of the merchandise." "Cole," Victor ordered, "I want everything recorded. When Moretti gets here, I want his desperation in 4K. I want the other families to see him begging." Ryan released Lena's face with a shove. He stepped back, breathing hard, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "He won't beg. He will die." "We will see," Victor said, checking the viewfinder. "The camera is rolling." Outside, the silence of the night shattered. 2 gunshots rang out from the east side of the warehouse, followed by the shouting of guards. Marco and Luca had engaged. "Breach," Dante whispered to himself. He moved like a shadow against the brickwork of the west wall. He found the side service door. It was locked, rusted shut. He didn't bother with lockpicks. He fired 2 suppressed rounds into the hinges and kicked the door in. He stepped into a narrow, dimly lit corridor. A guard appeared at the far end, raising a rifle. Dante didn't break stride. He raised his weapon and fired. The guard dropped. Dante moved forward, his heart pounding a war rhythm against his ribs. He stepped over the body, his eyes scanning every doorway, every shadow. It was not Dante Moretti, the businessman, the strategist. He was a force of nature driven by a singular, terrifying image, Lena tied to a chair, waiting for him. Another man stepped out from a side room, swinging a pipe. It was close quarters, too close to aim. Dante caught the swing on his forearm, ignoring the crack of pain in his bone. He drove his knee into the man's stomach and followed it with a brutal pistol whip to the temple. The man crumpled. Dante kept moving. The corridor opened up into a catwalk overlooking the main factory floor. He could hear voices below. He could hear Ryan's frantic shouting, "Lena!" He moved to the railing, keeping low. Below him, the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Lena was bound in the center of the room. Ryan was pacing behind her. Victor Serrano stood by a camera. Alarms began to blare throughout the facility, a harsh, rhythmic honking that signaled the perimeter had been breached. "They are here!" Ryan screamed, spinning around, his eyes wide with panic. "You said your men would stop them!" "Calm down," Victor barked, drawing a heavy revolver. "It is just a probing attack. My men will handle it." "They are not handling it," Ryan yelled. He looked at the door, then at Lena. A twisted logic took hold of him. If Dante was coming, Dante would take her, and Ryan could not lose. He could not be the one who was left behind. He moved behind Lena's chair. He grabbed her shoulders, his fingers digging into her flesh through her thin shirt. "You brought him here," Ryan hissed into her ear. "You did this." Lena froze. She could feel his breath hot on her neck. She could feel the instability vibrating through his hands. "If I can't have you," Ryan whispered, his voice dropping to that terrible, cold tone she remembered from her darkest nights, "then no one will. I will not let him take you. I will not let you laugh at me with him." The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Lena closed her eyes. Dread, cold and paralyzing, washed over her. She thought of the gun he might have. She thought of the knife. But then, another memory surfaced. She remembered the balcony. She remembered the cold wind and the warmth of Dante's jacket settling over her shoulders. She remembered the way he had looked at her, not as a possession to be hoarded, but as a person to be known. She remembered his hand tucking her hair behind her ear, his thumb brushing her temple, the silent promise that he would stand between her and the dark. "You are safe here." The memory didn't just comfort her, it steeled her. It ignited a spark of defiance that burned through the fear. She was not property. She was not a prize to be fought over by dogs. She was Lena Hart. Ryan's grip loosened for a fraction of a second as he turned to look at the main entrance, expecting Dante to burst through there. It was the only chance she would get. Lena grit her teeth. She planted her feet firmly on the ground and threw her entire body weight backward. She slammed the heavy wooden chair into Ryan's legs. "Get off me!" she screamed. Ryan caught off guard, stumbled. He tripped over the chair legs and fell backward, crashing onto the concrete floor with a shout of surprise. The chair tipped with him, sending Lena sideways, but the chaos was enough. The distraction drew Victor's eyes, and in that split second of confusion, the door to the catwalk burst open. Dante didn't use the stairs. He vaulted over the railing, dropping 10 feet to the factory floor. He landed in a crouch, gun drawn, absorbing the impact with a grunt. He rose to his full height, leveling his weapon at Victor. "Don't move!" Dante roared. The sound of his voice filled the warehouse, drowning out the alarms. He took in the scene in a single heartbeat. Lena, toppled on the floor, still tied to the chair, looking shaken but alive. Ryan scrambling to his feet, looking terrified. Victor Serrano standing by his camera, a smirk slowly spreading across his face despite the gun pointed at his chest. Dante's chest heaved. His hair was wet with rain and sweat, his eyes wild. The rage inside him was a physical thing, a beast straining against the leash, demanding he tear these men apart. But he saw Lena. He saw the way she was looking at him, wide-eyed, hopeful, terrified. He forced the beast down. He stepped sideways, placing his body between Lena and Victor, shielding her. "Let her go," Dante said. His voice was no longer a roar. It was a low, lethal rumble. Victor Serrano chuckled. He didn't raise his hands. He kept his revolver pointed loosely at the ground, knowing that if Dante shot him, his men in the shadows would open fire on Lena. "Look at you," Victor mocked. "The great Dante Moretti, climbing railings, sweating. You look like a desperate man. Dante, you look weak." "Let her go," Dante repeated, stepping closer. "You've become soft," Victor continued, gesturing to the camera. "All for a girl? A barista? You are willing to start a war for this?" "She is not just a girl," Dante said. "She is a liability," Victor said. "But I am a businessman. I see an opportunity." Victor holstered his gun slowly, a show of arrogance. "I have a proposal. You want the girl? You can have her. She walks out of here right now. But in exchange, you pull your men off the waterfront. The shipping lanes belong to the Serrano family. All of them. And you pay a 20% tax on your imports through my docks." It was a devastating demand. It would cripple Dante's operations. It would cost him millions and weaken his standing with the other families. It was a surrender. "No!" Ryan shouted. He had regained his footing and was standing near the wall, looking from Victor to Dante. "That wasn't the deal. We break him, and I get Lena. She comes with me." "Shut up, Cole," Victor snapped without looking at him. He kept his eyes on Dante. "Well, what is it going to be? Moretti, your empire, or your girlfriend?" Dante didn't look at Victor. He looked down at Lena. She was lying on her side, struggling to sit up. Her cheek was bruised where Ryan had grabbed her. Her wrists were raw against the plastic ties, but her eyes were fierce. She shook her head slightly, a silent plea for him not to destroy himself for her. Dante felt a crack in his heart. He realized then that he didn't care about the waterfront. He didn't care about the money or the respect or the territory. He would burn it all to ash if it meant she was safe. He lowered his gun slightly. He took a step back, closer to Lena. He reached down, his hand brushing against her bound wrist. It was a fleeting touch, but it carried the weight of a vow. "I have you." He looked up at Victor. "Done," Dante said. The word hung in the air. Victor blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected Dante to cave so easily. He had expected a negotiation, a fight. A slow smile spread across his face. "Smart choice." "No!" Ryan screamed. He rushed forward, his face purple with rage. "She is mine. You cannot trade her. She belongs to me." "You are trash. Moretti," Ryan spat, pointing a shaking finger at Dante. "You are buying her? Is that it? She's not yours to buy. She is mine." Dante ignored him. He kept his eyes on Victor. "I take the deal, but only if she walks out of this building unharmed. Right now, before we sign anything, before we talk territory, she leaves." Victor hesitated. He sensed a trap. Dante Moretti did not surrender. But the camera was rolling. He had the leverage, and he had armed men in the shadows. "Fine," Victor said. He waved a hand at one of his guards. "Cut her loose." The guard stepped forward with a knife. Dante watched him like a hawk, his muscles coiled, ready to spring if the knife moved even an inch toward Lena's skin. The guard sawed through the zip ties on Lena's ankles, then her wrists. Lena gasped as her hands came free. She rubbed her wrists. Scrambling to her feet, she looked at Dante. He gave her a tiny, almost imperceptible nod toward the door. "Run." Ryan saw the look. He saw Lena stand up. He saw her take a step away from him, toward Dante, toward freedom. Something inside Ryan snapped. The reality of his loss crashed down on him. He was losing. He had teamed up with murderers. He had kidnapped her. He had threatened her, and she was still choosing the other man. She was walking away. "No," Ryan whispered. He moved fast, before the guard could step back, before Dante could fully position himself. Ryan lunged. He grabbed Lena's arm, spinning her around. He yanked her back against his chest. "She isn't going anywhere," Ryan shrieked. He leaned down, his face buried in her hair, his hand clawing at her shoulder, dragging down toward her neck. "If you walk out that door, Lena," he hissed in her ear, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I will hunt you down. I will kill everyone you ever talk to. You will never be free of me." Dante saw the terror flood Lena's eyes. He saw Ryan's hand tightening. He saw the absolute refusal in Ryan's eyes to let her go. The deal was broken. The negotiation was over. Dante didn't think. He didn't calculate. He lunged. The air in the warehouse seemed to solidify, turning into a wall of tension that separated the living from the dead. Ryan's hand was still clamped on Lena's shoulder, his fingernails digging into her skin, his breath hot and venomous against her neck. He was claiming her like a spoil of war, oblivious to the predator that had just been unleashed. In that instant, as Ryan lifted his other hand toward Lena's face, intent on hurting her again, the world exploded into motion. Dante moved. He did not run. He blurred. He covered the distance between them with the terrifying speed of a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. He slammed into the space between Lena and Ryan, his shoulder driving into Ryan's chest with the force of a battering ram. Ryan gasped, the air leaving his lungs in a rush. He lost his grip on Lena and stumbled backward, his shoes skidding on the oil-stained concrete. Dante did not pursue him immediately. He planted his feet, positioning himself as a human shield in front of Lena. He drew himself up to his full height, his chest heaving, his suit jacket torn at the shoulder, his eyes burning with a cold, black fire. He looked at Ryan, who was wheezing and clutching his chest. The warehouse went deathly silent. Even Victor Serrano lowered his weapon. Sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure, Dante spoke. His voice was not a shout. It was a low, lethal vibration that seemed to emanate from the floorboards, rattling the bones of everyone present. "Touch her again and you die." He said it with absolute finality. It was not a threat. It was a prophecy. This time, there was no whispered exchange in a coffee shop. Everyone in the room heard it. The guards in the shadows heard it. Lena, standing behind him, trembling, heard it and felt the truth of it resonate in her marrow. Ryan stared at Dante. Humiliation washed over him, hot and suffocating. He had been bested. He had been physically dominated by the man he had called trash. He looked at Lena, who was looking at Dante with eyes wide with awe and terror. He saw the connection between them, the invisible tether that he had never been able to forge with her despite years of control. He broke. "You think you won?" Ryan screamed, his voice cracking. "You think you can just take her?" Desperation made him foolish. Ryan reached into the back of his waistband and pulled a hidden knife, a sleek, serrated blade he had brought for intimidation. "Ryan, no!" Lena shouted. Ryan didn't listen. He charged. He swung the knife in a wild, clumsy arc aimed at Dante's stomach. Dante did not flinch. He watched the blade coming with the detached focus of a man who had survived knife fights in the back alleys of Naples before he was 20. He waited until the metal was inches from his vest. Then he reacted. Dante's hand shot out, clamping around Ryan's wrist. He twisted hard. There was a sickening pop of cartilage. Ryan shrieked, the sound echoing off the high metal ceiling. Dante stepped in, using Ryan's own momentum against him, and drove an elbow into Ryan's jaw. Ryan's head snapped back. His fingers went numb, and the knife clattered uselessly across the concrete floor, sliding under a pallet. Dante didn't stop. He swept Ryan's legs, sending him crashing to the ground. Dante was on him in a second. His knee pinning Ryan's chest, his hand wrapped around Ryan's throat. The urge to squeeze was overwhelming. It roared in Dante's ears, a red tide demanding blood. He could end it right here. He could crush the windpipe of the man who had tormented Lena, who had made her feel small, who had dared to put his hands on her. It would be so easy. But then he heard it, a memory, a whisper in the chaos. "I don't want blood on my hands." Lena's voice, her plea from that first night in her apartment. Dante's grip froze. He looked down at Ryan's terrified, purple face. If he killed him now, he would be the monster Ryan claimed he was. He would be trading Lena's safety for her soul. He released the pressure, though he didn't stand up. "Kill him!" Victor Serrano shouted from the corner, realizing the duel was over and his leverage was gone. "Open fire! Kill them all!" The spell broke. The guards in the shadows raised their rifles. "Down!" Dante roared, throwing himself off Ryan and tackling Lena. They hit the floor just as the air above them filled with lead. Bullets chipped the concrete, sending stinging dust and shards flying. The sound was deafening, a chaotic symphony of cracks and thuds. Dante rolled, pulling Lena behind a stack of heavy wooden crates. He pressed her against the wood, covering her body with his own, shielding her from the hail of gunfire. "Stay down," he commanded, his mouth next to her ear. "Dante," Lena cried, clutching his shirt, "you are bleeding." A bullet had grazed his arm, tearing the fabric and leaving a red streak, but he barely felt it. Suddenly, the heavy boom of shotguns answered from the hallways. "Clear left! Clear right!" It was Luca. Dante's crew poured into the warehouse from the breach point, moving with professional precision. They laid down suppressing fire, forcing Serrano's men to duck for cover. The tide of the battle turned instantly. Serrano's hired guns were thugs. Dante's men were soldiers. Amidst the deafening noise of the firefight, a strange bubble of silence seemed to form behind the crates. Lena looked up at Dante. His face was smeared with grime, his eyes scanning the room, checking angles. He looked terrifying. He looked magnificent. "Go!" she sobbed, pushing at his chest. "You have to go. Don't throw your life away for me. Dante, please." Dante looked down at her. He stopped scanning. He cupped her face in his large, rough hands. His thumbs wiped away a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "Lena," he said. His voice was steady, anchoring her in the storm. "Look at me." She met his gaze. "I am not throwing my life away," he told her, his eyes burning with an intensity that made her heart stop. "I am using it, protecting you. It is the first thing in a long time that has made me feel like a decent man. Do you understand? You are not the cost. You are the reason." The connection between them was raw and real, stripped of all pretense. In the middle of a war zone, they found a moment of absolute peace. "Boss," Luca shouted from across the floor. "We have the perimeter. Serrano is bolting for the back office." Dante pulled back. The soldier returned. "Stay here," Dante ordered Lena. "Do not move until I come for you." He stood up, firing 2 shots to cover his movement, and sprinted across the open floor. "Luca, secure Victor," Dante barked. "I want him alive. Marco, watch the girl." "On it," Luca yelled. Tackling a fleeing guard, Dante didn't chase Victor. He saw a figure scrambling into a side storage room. Ryan. Dante followed him. He kicked the door open. Ryan was backing away, knocking over shelves, looking for a weapon, for a window, for anything. He grabbed a heavy wrench from a workbench. "Stay back!" Ryan screamed. Swinging the wrench, Dante stepped inside and closed the door. He holstered his gun. He didn't need it. He walked through Ryan's swing, blocking the arm and delivering a punishing blow to Ryan's stomach. Ryan doubled over. Dante grabbed him by the collar and threw him against the wall. Ryan slid down, gasping, blood streaming from his nose. Dante stood over him, breathing hard. The rage was back. Cold and sharp. This man was a disease. If Dante let him go, he would fester. He would come back. Dante reached for his backup knife in his boot. "Dante!" Lena stood in the doorway. She had disobeyed him. She was breathing heavily, her hair wild, her wrists red and raw. Dante froze, the knife in his hand. He looked at Lena, then back at Ryan, who was cowering on the floor, sobbing. "Don't," Lena said. She stepped into the room. "He will never stop." "Lena," Dante said, his voice tight. "Men like him. They don't learn. They only stop when they are stopped." "If you kill him," Lena said, walking closer, ignoring the violence in the room, "then he wins. He will haunt you. Every time you look at me, you will remember that you murdered him for me. He will control us from beyond the grave. He will still be the third person in our relationship." She reached out and touched Dante's arm. Her hand was shaking, but her grip was firm. "I want to be free, Dante," she whispered. "I don't want to be traded from one violent man to another. I want to choose, and I choose a life without blood on the floor." Her words cut through the red haze of his fury. She was right. Killing Ryan was the easy way out for Dante, but it was a prison sentence for Lena's conscience. Dante looked at Ryan, then at the knife. He slowly sheathed the blade. "Fine," Dante said. He reached down and grabbed Ryan by the hair, hauling him to his feet. Ryan yelped. What are you doing?" Ryan stammered. Dante dragged him out of the storage room and back into the main warehouse. The gunfire had stopped. Luca and the team had secured the area. Victor Serrano was on his knees in the center of the room, his hands zip-tied, looking sullen and defeated. Dante marched Ryan over to the camera Victor had set up. The red light was still blinking. It was still recording. Dante shoved Ryan in front of the lens. "Speak," Dante commanded. "What?" Ryan whimpered. "Confess," Dante said. "Tell the camera everything. Tell them about the stalking. Tell them about the threats. Tell them how you paid Serrano to kidnap her. Tell them every single thing you did to break her." I can't," Ryan said. "I will go to jail." Dante leaned in close, his voice a dark whisper. "You have 2 choices. Ryan, you confess to the law, or you answer to me. And I promise you, the judge will be much kinder than I will be." Ryan looked at Dante's eyes. He saw the abyss there. He turned to the camera, broken, battered, and stripped of his arrogance. Ryan began to speak. He spilled everything, the voicemails, the tracking, the alliance with Serrano. He gave the authorities enough evidence to bury him for 20 years. When he was done, Dante shoved him toward Marco. "Take him to the drop point, leave the recording with him. Call the police anonymously. Tell them where to find a kidnapper." Ryan was dragged away, weeping. He was alive, but his life as he knew it, his reputation, his career, his freedom, was dead. Dante turned to Victor Serrano. Luca was holding Victor by the collar. "What about him, boss? The river?" Victor looked up, defiant. "You kill me, Moretti, and my brothers rain hell on you." Dante looked at Victor, then at Lena. She was watching him, waiting to see what kind of man he would be. "No river," Dante said. "The police are already on their way for Cole. We leave Serrano here. with the evidence of the kidnapping, with the illegal weapons. You are ratting me out? Victor spat, incredulous. That is against the code. The code is dead, Dante said. I am rewriting it. He looked at Luca. We are leaving. Tip off the federal task force. Give them Serrano's warehouse locations. All of them. It was a massive sacrifice. By giving up Serrano, Dante was inviting law enforcement into their world. He was weakening the entire underworld ecosystem, including his own potential allies. But it was the only way to end the violence without creating more of it. Let's go, Dante said. He walked over to Lena, and he didn't say a word. He just wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her into his side. She leaned into him, exhausted, shaking, but safe. They walked out of the warehouse together, leaving the sirens wailing in the distance. The safe house was a small cabin 3 hours north of the city, tucked away in a dense pine forest. It was quiet there. The only sound was the wind in the trees and the crackle of the fireplace. It had been 3 days since the warehouse. The media was in a frenzy. The coffee shop kidnapping was the headline on every news station. Ryan Cole, the respectable businessman, exposed as a monster. Victor Serrano, the elusive crime figure, in federal custody. Lena watched the news for exactly 5 minutes before Dante turned the TV off. You don't need to see that, he said. His lawyers had done their work. Lena's name was kept out of the papers. She was referred to only as the victim. She was safe from the scrutiny. That night, the cabin was dimly lit by the fire. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world washed clean. Lena sat on the edge of the large bed, wearing one of Dante's oversized sweaters. Dante sat beside her. He was shirtless, a bandage wrapped around his upper arm where the bullet had grazed him. Lena reached out and touched his forearm. There was a small, jagged white line there, a scar from years ago. Where did you get this one? She asked softly, tracing the line with her fingertip. Dante looked at his arm, then at her. I was 19. I tried to stop a man from beating a stray dog. He had a broken bottle. Lena smiled. A small, sad thing. You saved the dog. I kept him for 10 years, Dante said. His name was Brutus. The silence that followed was comfortable, heavy with unsaid things. Do you regret it? Dante asked suddenly. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at his hands. Calling me? Dragging yourself into this dark world? Lena stopped tracing the scar. She looked at his profile, the sharp jaw, the heavy brow, the weariness that sat on his shoulders like a cloak. I didn't drag myself into the dark, she said. I was already in the dark. Dante, you were the one who brought the light. She leaned in. He turned to meet her. She kissed him. It wasn't like the kiss on the balcony, which had been full of desperation and hunger. This kiss was slow. It was deliberate. It was a seal on a contract written in adrenaline and trust. Dante groaned low in his throat. His hands came up to cradle her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. He slid his hands down to her shoulders, pulling her closer until there was no air between them. She pressed against him, feeling the solid heat of his chest, the beat of his heart. She felt safe. For the first time in her life, she felt completely, irrevocably safe in a man's arms. They lay back against the pillows, fully clothed, tangled together. Dante wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. She laced her fingers with his. We will figure it out, he murmured into her hair. Whatever comes next. We build it. We build it, she echoed. They lay there as the fire died down to embers, breathing in unison, watching the shadows dance on the ceiling, making plans for a future that finally belonged to them. 6 weeks later, the winter had turned to spring in Harborview City. The air was still cool, but the trees in the park were bursting with green buds. The scandal had faded from the front pages, replaced by new gossip. Ryan Cole was awaiting trial, denied bail due to the overwhelming evidence of flight risk and the severity of the charges. Victor Serrano was cutting deals, dismantling his own network to shave years off his sentence. The underworld was quiet. Dante Moretti had made good on his silent promise. He had stepped back. He had sold off his interests in the gambling dens and the loan sharking. He was investing heavily in construction, in real estate, in shipping logistics that were entirely legal. It was a slow process. He didn't wash a century of grime off in a month, but he was scrubbing. Lena stood on the sidewalk in front of a small storefront with a fresh coat of paint. The sign above the door read, Heart Company, Design. Mia walked out, carrying a box of supplies. The Wi-Fi is up, and the espresso machine works. We are in business. It looks perfect, Lena said, beaming. She felt a hand on her waist. Dante stood beside her. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket. He looked younger, lighter. It suits you, Dante said, looking at the sign. Your name. In lights. It is small, Lena said. It is yours, Dante corrected. He held out his hand. Lena looked at it. It was the hand that had disarmed a man for her, the hand that had held her while she cried, the hand that had tucked her hair behind her ear and promised her safety. She took it. They walked down the sidewalk of Harborview City together. People watched them pass. Some recognized Dante and whispered. Some looked at Lena with curiosity. But they didn't care. They weren't the victim and the savior anymore. They were just Dante and Lena, two flawed people with scarred pasts, walking hand in hand toward a gentler future, choosing each other with every step. Thank you so much for listening to Touch Her Again and You Die. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Dante and Lena as much as I enjoyed writing it for you. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment down below letting me know where in the world you are listening from and what you thought of the ending. Did Dante do the right thing by sparing Ryan? If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Mafia Romance Stories channel so you never miss an episode. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next story.